Hello there. Today we're going to hear the awesome story of one man who thought he had a valuable treasure but realized it was so much more than he even knew. The star of this story is this guy here, good old Dave. Remember how in 2015 everyone was choreographing their own dance routine to Uptown Funk? Well, Dave wasn't having any of that. He's a prospector and by golly he had some gold to find. Did you know that Australia was a hotspot for several gold rushes during the 1800s? Dave's great-grandfather had been one of the many early prospectors to strike it rich, and his whole life he had heard wondrous tales of men who had struck it rich from the outback's vast gold deposits. Obviously, Dave was inspired to pursue the same riches, and as soon as he was able, he became a modern-day prospector. Okay, so there isn't nearly as much gold left in the ground as there once was, but every year, several adventurous prospectors manage to get enough gold to make it all worthwhile. With a metal detector and a heart full of dreams, Dave set up in Maryborough Regional Park, close to Melbourne. He quickly got to work searching for gold, but as time went on, he wasn't finding anything. Dave began to think about his great-grandfather and how he had never given up on his dreams. Feeling renewed by the thought of his ancestor's determination, he kept on going. In fact, he was mining in one of the very same areas that his great-grandfather had found a large portion of his wealth. Sadly though, poor Dave was beginning to think that his great-grandfather had gotten all the gold out of the area nearly 200 years earlier. But just then he came across something pretty epic. Just as he was about to give up all hope, he spotted a patch of yellow clay, and on top of it was a strange reddish rock. The sight was definitely out of the ordinary, and Dave was determined to learn more about it. Coming from a long line of miners, he knew that this big red rock could certainly contain gold. Excited, Dave loaded the rock into his truck and headed for home. The next day, Dave had some friends over for a barbecue, and he showed them his unique find. Some of them, fellow prospectors themselves, agreed that Dave needed to crack the rock open to find out what exactly was inside. Over the next week, Dave began to try several different methods to get into the rock. The first was a rock saw, but the highly specialized instrument appeared to be no match for the incredibly solid rock. Shocked by this initial failure, Dave continued to seek an effective method by which to open up the rock. Next, he tried several tools, including an angle grinder, a drill, and even a sledgehammer. Frustrated, he even let his friends have a few whacks, but nothing could crack the rock. In a last-ditch attempt to get the gold inside, Dave dipped the entire rock in acid. He was at least hoping to dissolve or at least weaken it to the point that it would finally break. But still nothing. By this point, Dave was nearly ready to give up, and that's just what he did, setting the rock aside and hoping to come up with a new plan. In just a moment, we'll tell you what they did next, but first make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon right now. After you click the bell, comment notification squad below, and I'll reply to all of you saying thanks, because I love you like that. Dave was certain that this rock must contain gold. After all, his great-grandfather had struck it big in the exact same area, and there was no other excuse for the look of this bizarre rock. Still, having exhausted most of his options, the rock pretty much just sat there and collected dust. After all, for every day he spent working on it, he lost a perfectly good day of prospecting in the area. And he was absolutely certain that it would yield results. Sadly, a few years went by and he failed to strike it rich. But then he started thinking about that old rock again. This is when he decided to call in a pro. Dr. Henry, a geologist from Melbourne, showed up and began to examine the rock. Soon he and his team of experts determined that the rock didn't contain any gold. Instead, it was a 5 billion year old meteor. Luckily, the professionals had the right tools to get inside, and using a diamond saw, they were able to cut off a small slice. After analyzing it, they figured out that it contained a shockingly high percentage of iron, which is probably why poor Dave had so much trouble trying to cut it. It was classified as an H5 chondrite, which is a fancy way of saying super rare, ultra cool 40-pound space rock. Dave's story is pretty awesome. After all, not everybody gets to keep a 5 billion year old meteor in the garage for a couple years. Have you ever owned something valuable that turned out to be more than it appeared? Let me know in the comments below and make sure you click on one of the videos on the screen to hear another amazing story. Have a good day, everybody.